Welcome to the Pure Performance Cafe. May I take your order?
Yes, I would like a shot of Pure Performance, please.
Coming right up.
Welcome to another episode of Pure Performance Cafe in Linz with Alois Mayr. Alois, hi, how are you?
Good, how are you? Thanks for having me again at the Performance Cafe.
Yeah.
I've been there, I think, once already.
I think so too, yeah. Alois, quick reminder for the people that don't know you. What's your role right now at Dynatrace?
So my role right now at Dynatrace is I'm a product manager for all things Kubernetes and OpenShift. And I'm taking care of, bringing enterprise monitoring to customers with large Kubernetes and OpenShift environments.
Cool. Topic of today is obviously Kubernetes related, Istio. Why?
Yes.
What is Istio for people that don't know? Why is it so hot? Why do we read everywhere about it?
Yeah, Istio is a very hot topic at the moment. So the whole Kubernetes community, OpenShift community, all are talking about Istio at the moment. So Istio basically helps you to implement the service mesh. So where you can get like cross-cutting concerns externalized in an Istio deployment, where you can define like how your services deployed in Kubernetes can communicate with each other.
Cool. So that means it's something that I will add on top of Kubernetes. So how is it installed?
Yes, so it's typically added on top of Kubernetes. So there are basically two ways to deploy it. So one way is, so like the rather old one is, where you have kind of like an opt-in on every pod where you want to let's say Istiofy a pod. And the newer way is that Istio makes use of a mutating webhook where it automatically deploys the Envoy sidecars to all your pods in a given namespace when you opted in to Istiofy all the pods in a namespace.
Cool. And you just mentioned a word, Envoy. I think Envoy is one of the key components of Istio. And can you explain what Envoy does?
Yeah, Envoy basically is a proxy. So at least in context of Istio, it's used as a proxy, which means that all the traffic all the egress traffic, at least from services within Kubernetes or from the pods in Kubernetes, will need to pass the Envoy proxy, which is deployed as a sidecar to every pod. And then the Envoy proxy can decide what happens with this traffic. So basically it means whether it needs to route the traffic to another specific pod. If you have like an HA deployment of a workload in Kubernetes, Envoy can also then decide whether to drop packages, do whatever proxies do.
So that basically means if I have Envoy enabled or Istio enabled, every single pod that I deploy will automatically be proxied through Envoy. That means every single request that end up in my containers will automatically go through Envoy, and then Envoy can do, I guess, a lot of interesting things with these requests. Like what?
Yes, correct. So this will happen if you enable Istio for these pods. So then this will happen. So basically, what you can do there is you can configure Istio to route traffic to your pods. Like if you have, for example, a plugin deployment, you can then configure Istio, and Istio will then, the control plane will then configure the envoys to route, for example, all the traffic to all my blue services. And when I then deploy a green one, that I can split the traffic between the blue services and the green services. So this is like one use case of rolling out Istio. Kind of like having like this deployment strategy where you can run canary deployments, blue-green deployments. You can do A/B testing because you can define how Envoy should route the traffic for your services.
And you can change this, I assume, on the fly through a command line interface or through some APIs.
Yes, so basically this is standard Kubernetes mechanisms then. So Istio runs in Kubernetes, so you can use like configurations. So you have tons of YAML files basically, where you can define how the deployment strategy should look like for your pods. and it's just like a matter of updating these configs, and you will immediately see the effect in Istio, and the traffic will be then routed like you updated the routes.
Cool. So we have traffic routing, deployment options. What other use cases would Envoy support?
Security. So security is also one of the use cases here. So you can so Istio and Envoy can take care of service authentication between services. So it can also take care of cycling certificates and encrypting traffic, so that app developers who are in charge of the apps can focus on building apps and no longer need to take care of like these, let's say, rather operational workloads.
Cool. That's like automating a lot of the operational aspects. Then I would assume, knowing that every single request will kind of if configured, go through Envoy. That means some logging, some tracing, some monitoring is probably available too?
Yes, so this is another topic in Istio. So Istio, you can deploy Istio so that it also helps you to provide like all these metrics, logs from your services, but also like tracing, web request tracing, so that Istio works as kind of like a provider for this, let's say, monitoring relevant information. And you can then add adapters where Istio will then send this monitoring information to your backend.
Cool. But when it comes to request tracing, and I think this is an important thing because we had a discussion early on, right? This is really just request tracing. That means incoming and outgoing HTTP requests, we can trace them and we get some information about how many go in, how many go out, and that's about it. There's no code level visibility that you will get. It's request tracing.
Correct. Since, of course, envoys are deployed as sidecars, they have no visibility into code level. They also have no visibility into basically how stuff works in your app, right? Whether you have threading or whatever in place. What they only can do is taking care of monitoring or analyzing traffic that need to pass the Envoy proxy, of course. So this basically means all requests to other services. So there is no way to get insights into code level, hotspots, database statements, and stuff like that.
Cool.
Right.
So to summarize on Istio and Envoy especially, that means envoys get deployed as sidecars to my pods where I enable them. And then basically I can use it for traffic routing for certain deployment strategies, right? Blue, green, canary releases. I can leverage it for security, so for authentication and encryption. I can also use it for logging and also for monitoring purposes. Now, it's rather new, but do you, Alois, already see it with some of our customers that it's been used as well, or is it just something that is on the PR machine of Google?
No, that's not something that it's only like in marketing relevant. So we do have customers that are heavily using Istio, and they for like basically two reasons. So the one reason is basically they want to understand and have like the ability for blue-green deployments. They want to have A/B testing in there, and the other one is basically to have like this operational knowledge out of the app teams again, to have like stuff like security, authentication, like maintained somewhere else. So these are like basically the interesting things here. But what they ask us is, so when you have like this additional component in your system, which has like lots of duties, right? So lots of stuff happening there. What they ask us is they want to understand how much time actually spent in Istio. So whenever you have a request, let's say from service A to service B, and there is like this Envoy in between, they want to understand how much time is spent in the Envoy or in the Istio system at all, right? So they are interested in how mature basically is this Istio system at all, and how much time is spent, because overhead and response time overhead in particular is always a concern.
I guess also how does it
for people?
How does it impact latency between services? Because obviously that's what it impacts a lot. Okay, that's interesting. Now, you are the product manager for Dynatrace on Kubernetes, so you need to figure out, why should people actually then use Dynatrace and not just what comes with Istio. So this one use case makes sense, right? How much time is spent within Istio? What other things are out there why people would still come to Dynatrace and use it?
Yeah, well, we have touched already a couple of points here. So one other point basically is that you will also need to have visibility into your applications to understand whether the applications itself work properly. So you need code level visibility. You need tracing across different stacks, but across different platforms even.
Yeah.
So we have customers that not only run, let's say, Kubernetes-based environments. So in this case, like one of those customers has like OpenShift running. Yeah. They also have Cloud Foundry running right next to each other, right? And so they have also traffic coming from Cloud Foundry to OpenShift and back again. So Istio will be helpful just, seeing like web requests within one of these platforms. But with Dynatrace, you can basically have like this multi-cloud coverage where you not only see like requests through all technologies, but also across different platforms.
And then obviously we also know many enterprises out there still have their Java application servers somewhere lingering around their JBosses, their WebSphere, and obviously, right? So
there's lots of funny stuff out there still. And the cool thing here is that these customers try to move all that workloads to Kubernetes because they just can containerize their stuff and run it as a container on Kubernetes. So this is also helpful for them.
Cool.
Right.
So that means Dynatrace, obviously, with the one agent technology that runs on all these platforms, full end-to-end visibility. Another cool thing of one agent is the end user monitoring.
Correct. So this is something that is not covered at all in Istio only. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
So where you have like monitoring for your real users. So where you can understand where your real users basically have problems when using your application. So this is a very important piece of information to figure out whether you have problems in the back end, in the front end, because this basically, at the end of the day, counts when it comes to user experience.
Exactly.
So what is the response time and failures, the experience at all for the end user.
Yeah, and it's also a validation for the business justification to move over to this new stack, because if your end user, if your individual services are super fast, but you have an end-to-end application that is still delivering bad user experience, you have an issue, right? And then you need to figure out where the problems are.
Yeah, and the end user honestly doesn't really care if if the application the end user is using is running, or if the backend is running in Kubernetes on a rather legacy stack or somewhere else. So it's really about the end user performance then.
Cool. And then maybe a last point, and you said it earlier, Istio, the monitoring aspect of Envoy, is really, it acts as a monitoring provider, but it doesn't mean that it automatically analyzes baselines, any of this data, right? This is all stuff that we've built over years into Dynatrace. Correct. So think of it like Istio is just like a provider that has like means to read that information, to scrape that metrics from Istio or somewhere else. And what you basically need is with all this information, like being like logs, metrics, traces, code level hotspots, end user experience, synthetic web checks, whatever. So you need to find, or you need to have a solution that basically is able to analyze everything here and to have like all these dependencies to understand whether, for example, a problematic pod in the back end has a negative impact on the end user experience in the front end. So this information needs to be stored and analyzed in the back end somewhere, and I think, of course, Dynatrace is a perfect means for that. Cool. Hey, thank you so much for the overview. I know Istio is version 1.0 right now, I believe.
Yes,
right?
It's 1.0 since I think 2 or 3 weeks now.
Yeah, cool. And there's a lot of talk at Google Next, obviously. And I'm pretty sure we'll hear more from you and your team, especially about Istio and Dynatrace.
Yes, so stay tuned. There's a lot to come around Istio. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more use cases from customers here.
Cool. Thank you, Alois.
Thanks, Andy.